Hello and welcome to Homemaking with Joy. I'm Rachel, and today we're making my favorite cookies, freshly milled chocolate chip. A couple of notes about this recipe. I have adapted it to be much lower sugar than other cookie recipes. I think desserts in general are too sweet, and so I switched this one around a little bit. So I removed 2/3 of a cup of sugar and added a 1/2 cup of flour to make up that difference, and they are the perfect sweetness for me. You can also swap out semi-sweet chocolate chips for dark chocolate chips if you would like to cut some of the sweetness there. So I've had some family members tell me they prefer their cookies to be sweeter. I think these are perfect. And I have a child who can't handle sugar very well, but these are an acceptable option, especially because they're made with the freshly milled grains. They do have more nutrition and will balance out the sugar spike that can very easily come from desserts. So if you're looking for a good kid-friendly option or just something for you, I like to bring these to family gatherings because I know what's in them, and it's real ingredients and they taste really good, and just watch them disappear. It is after bedtime, the kids are asleep. Normally now is when I would mill my flour fresh, but because my mill is kind of loud, I milled it earlier when the kids were awake. So this is 3.5 cups of soft white wheat flour that I milled. Because I milled it earlier, you can put it in the fridge or the freezer to help prevent the oxidation of the wheat or the flour, but it wasn't that long ago, so I just left it on the counter, and I was busy doing bedtime. So now we are getting to it. To this, we're going to add some baking soda and baking powder. Again, the recipe will be linked, so you can check that out. I'll make the notes about what things I changed. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. If you get the Parmesan cheese in the green containers, these lids fit on regular mouth mason jars, so definitely do that. 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, the aluminum-free kind. 1.5. Okay. I will mix these together, and then I'm going to cream my butter and my sugars in my mixer. You also need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Okay, let's keep going. I have 1 cup of room temperature butter, so that's 2 sticks of butter that I'm going to add. And then this is where I change the sugar. So I have brown sugar and I have white sugar. The recipe calls for 2/3 of a cup of each. I reduced it to 1/2 cup of each. 1 stick. Sticks, 1/2 cup of each kind of sugar. And then just like you would with any other cookie recipe, you cream them together. That wasn't. I'm not super exact with the measuring, so it's good enough. Plus, if I overshoot on the sugar a little bit, it's basically following the recipe. My sugars and butter have been creamed together. Looking good. Also note, the Bosch, I have the Bosch Universal Plus mixer. I think you can order cookie paddles for like cookie dough and stuff. I just use the regular bread dough attachment and it works just fine. And now to add the vanilla and the eggs. I make my own vanilla. Clearly I need to get some more out. But it's just easier to dig around the bottom than it is to fuss with it. And 2 eggs. And then mix. Everything's combined and we're ready for the next step, which is adding all of the dry ingredients. So with my Bosch, it's a larger mixer and I have a lid that completely covers the top. So I'm just going to throw all of my dry ingredients in here and mix it together. If you have a KitchenAid or an open top mixer, you might want to add like a little bit at a time so you don't get a huge cloud of flour, but I don't have to worry about that because this mixer is awesome and I can just throw everything in. one, part two, ready to go. I will occasionally stop and scrape down the sides with my spatula. It's not a bread dough, so I don't want to over knead it. I just want to combine the ingredients enough. But I also know that it takes freshly milled flour longer to absorb the liquids and the fats that are in this recipe than regular flour. So I'm going to scrape it down, let it sit for a couple minutes, then give it one last spin, and it should be the correct consistency for what you would think of as cookie dough. I've let this sit for a couple of minutes. I've spun it a couple of times. I had to scrape the bottom too, so I had to scrape the sides, but it was still looking dry, and I realized there was some butter stuck to the bottom from the creaming process, so I got all that up too, and now we're looking a little bit better. Admittedly, my butter probably was not 100% room temperature when I put it in here, so it may have had a little bit of trouble incorporating, but I think we're fine now. Also, they're just cookies. Don't stress too much. But let me show you what it looks like before I add the chocolate chips. Okay, not a superb angle, not a beautiful shot, but this is what my dough is looking like. It looks slightly crumbly, but when I push on it, like, it holds together just fine in the shape of a dough ball. So I'm calling it good. Plus it's super late at my house, so let's add these chocolate chips and get baking. One of my kids took a very nice and long nap this afternoon, but that meant he did not get to bed until 10 p.m. So I am baking cookies at, 10:30 p.m. I had planned to do this ahead of time, and so naturally bedtime doesn't go smoothly because I had plans to do this, of course. So don't make plans when you have kids, because then they'll just go haywire. But we're gonna have cookies at the end of this, and then I can eat one and go right to bed. I buy bulk of basically everything, and that includes chocolate chips. So 2 cups of chocolate chips, or whatever your heart desires. This is also a great base recipe, so like if you wanted to add any other mix-ins, you could totally do that. 2. And mix again. Yum, yum, and yum. We are in business. That is a lot of chocolate chips. Let me get the rest of my tools, and then we will get these baking. Here's my cookie dough. I have my cookie scooper, and I have my fabulous high quality Thank You Mom Christmas present gigantic baking sheet. It's huge, and I like it very much. These are the USA pans, and they are fabulous quality. I will use them forever. Wonderful baking, like evenness and just like the correct brownness, and good non-stick, but healthy, because we don't need to get into that conversation, but these are good for my family and they work really, really well. So I have this gigantic one that I'm going to fill up with cookie dough. Let's see how many cookies I can fit on here so I can be done ASAP. We are ready for the oven. These do spread out a little bit, so I didn't want to risk it by putting them too close together, but we shall see if I can fit more on the pan next time. I do have 2 other sizes of these baking sheets, so I'm going to go grab those and fill those up with cookies. The recipe calls for them to bake at 350 degrees for 14 to 17 minutes. My oven runs hot, so for me 13 minutes is perfect. I'll show you what they look like when I pull them out. Edges are slightly browned. The insides or the middle of the cookie still looks a little bit soft, but I let them sit on the pan for 2 minutes before removing them. They will finish cooling and baking like that. My house smells really good. These look perfect. Let's take them off the pan and onto a cooling rack. Check out. I didn't grease this pan or anything. They just pop right off. Super cool. All right, I don't need to film the rest. I'm just gonna do this with all the cookies. And don't count them because I might eat a couple. Round 2 out of the oven. I just pulled the last tray out of the oven at 11:15. Oh well, look at these cookies. So good. Here are my cookies. My husband has already come through and snagged a couple with a tall glass of milk. I counted, and this recipe for me yielded 44 cookies. I am going to let these cookies cool and then probably tomorrow put them in freezer bags and put them in my freezer. They freeze really well, and it is great portion control for you and your family. Otherwise, we would totally eat all of these, and I don't want to do that. So yes, freeze them, bag them, pull out a couple at a time and let them sit on the counter, or you can microwave them in a pinch, but they're better if you just let them sit out and warm up. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I like to share freshly milled flour recipes and other ways that I take care of my family and, you know, real mom life, you know, like baking cookies at 11:15 because I had to lay down with my kiddo and put him to bed. All of these things are part of real life, and I hope I can share that here, but we still like to eat really good food. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.